Hello and welcome to Live at Epiphan. It is Thursday at 3 o'clock. My name is George and I'm having internet problems, so hopefully I can manage to stay in this show today. Dan, you're looking a little different today. What's going on over there?
Well, I'm trying to use MoviePass without having to watch the ads, actually. So I made these nifty little glasses to trick the eye tracking.
All right there, Homer Simpson. I gotcha.
You see this? You see this
Uh,
story?
I did see this story, and all I can really say is I hate everything about it. Uh,
Why don't we jump
but
right into it?
yeah,
This is a news item that caught our eyes this week. MoviePass 2.0 wants to track your eyeballs to make sure you watch their ads. Very interesting. This sounds like a dystopian future that maybe we don't want to live in. I'm not sure. This is MoviePass is basically it's a subscription service that allows you to watch unlimited films, which on the surface sounds amazing. It sounds like Netflix or something. But the caveat here is that when you're watching their unlimited content on your phone, the camera on your phone is tracking your face and tracking your eyes and making sure that you are watching their advertisements. And in fact, if you stop watching, the movie will pause and it won't let you continue to watch the film unless your eyes stay glued to their ads. I don't know, George. You have any thoughts on this?
well, like I already mentioned, I hate everything about this. I think it's incredibly intrusive. I think it's ridiculous. It's kind of just I don't even know where did they even come up with this idea. Like it's I don't know. Yeah, like I don't know. I'm at a loss for words for how dumb this is. To be honest, it's like I get what they're trying to do and the approach they're trying to take, but like this is just bizarre. And I don't want to have to be honest, I watch a lot of content when I'm just like cooking dinner in the evening and my phone's just like sitting on the counter. I'm not looking
Yeah.
at it. I'm just listening. So this is ridiculous to me.
Yeah. It just shows the links, though, that advertisers will go to ensure that they're probably willing to pay more for the CPM on an advertisement where you can guarantee that the viewer is seeing it.
Right.
We're so used to scrolling past ads, whether it's on an app or in your browser or wherever it may be, or, like you said, just kind of tuning out and having content playing in the background. So maybe this is valuable for advertisers, but I think that, there's definitely some pushback. People don't like being tracked. It reminds me of this. I don't know if you recall the episode on Black Mirror where there's screens everywhere, and if you stop watching advertisements in your home, you're not allowed to, watch the content you want to watch. So that's what it kind of reminded me of. Also, obviously, the little Simpsons gag when Homer does jury duty
Yeah.
inspired these glasses. But there's also been some other maybe popular films that have demonstrated why we might not want this.
And
But
Bill mentioned that in chat. He's like, I think they came up with this idea after watching Clockwork Orange. My question is, where does it stop? Does this
yeah,
become full facial recognition so that only Dan can watch that? Or maybe it's Dan watched this ad, so now you're going to only get targeted ads for other things based on that? Like, it just,
yeah.
that seems like a spiral to me that I'm not too keen on.
It's kind of a shame that the first, thing we're noticing where it's using eye tracking is, to pump ads into your eyeballs. But, I think the technology itself has some value. And we demonstrated that
Sure.
here on our episode where we did some flight simulator, but we had facial tracking so that, the pilot can look around in the cockpit. You can imagine other scenarios using what we call foveated rendering, where actually the encoding power and the rendering power of the image is focused on the area of the screen or device where you're looking, which could make sense for certain applications. I know there's been some applications built on the Tobii eye tracking platform, which, maybe you could do market research, or maybe you could get a heat map of an application to understand how,
Yeah.
user interface, how well your user interface is working. So, there could be some very noble causes for eye tracking here,
For sure, but as is said in a movie before as well, with great power comes great responsibility, right? And that's, for me, advertising is the devil, and I hate to see technology like this being used for such a terrible purpose. In a way, it's if people want to opt into something, then let them subscribe to it, let them pay for it, and get rid of the ads. It's and trading off information is a form of payment, but eye tracking seems across the line to me.
Yeah, maybe. But I wonder if you ask people if they would take a free Netflix subscription if they, consented to watch a couple ads. Most people would probably agree to that. Netflix is getting more and more expensive. Maybe there would be people who'd be willing to trade off a little bit of privacy for some access to content. Let us know in chat what you guys think, whether you'd be willing to take a free Netflix subscription if it meant that you were, had your eyes tracked while you're watching Netflix.
I'm on side of no.
Yeah, curious. Speaking of changes in the, in the video app world, Facebook rolled out some new capabilities recently. Do we still call it Facebook? Meta?
No, they're technically Meta. Yeah, and that's where I am right now. I'm in the Metaverse.
Oh, beautiful.
It looks a lot like Tron or something. And I wish the Metaverse actually looked like this. Then it might be cool. Turns out Meta's not so cool. Yet. So there's been a lot of tools being added. There's ads being added. They're trying to roll out new features to the traditional Facebook platform to try and combat TikTok. Which I don't really understand. And Dan, you were looking at this the other day. But how do you see some of these new features coming?
Yeah. Well, this feature is, I don't think anyone would be surprised by this, but Facebook has added some, what they're calling Reels, which is another short form, vertical video, quick consumption based feature, competing with TikTok, it looks like to me. The thing that interests me here is just like it's starting to become a little bit confusing. What is the difference between Reels and Stories and Shorts, which you'd see on YouTube? It all kind of blends together, and I guess the nomenclature surrounding it is confusing for a lot of people. I know it is for me. But it's all kind of doing the same thing. It's response to the fact that people are consuming video on their mobile device in shorter chunks and trying to serve that audience to the best of its capability. I don't know if you've seen this at all. Do you watch vertical video, George, on any of your devices?
I try not to, but I end up doing it occasionally for things like this. I do not touch TikTok, but whether it's Instagram or YouTube or whatever, this type of content is so common now that you kind of can't avoid it. I get where it works, right? They're going to be monetizing it, throwing ads on it, which is going to make Meta money. That I totally understand. To me, it is feeding the addiction, the worst parts of social media addiction, the doom scrolling and the just one more, which is TikTok's entire business model. And I'm not here for that. That's not really my thing. But I do understand where the platforms are coming from, because if they can get the more ad impressions they can get, the better. And if that means more ad impressions because the chunks are smaller, that's a win for them.
Mm-hmm. I do think there's some merit to, the vertical video format and the consumability of it on a device.
Totally.
Maybe these are not the best representations of what it could be, but I would not be surprised if some major Hollywood film, with $100 million budget is shot vertically at some point. I would not be surprised, honestly, if they tried doing that, because I think it would actually be perhaps more successful and serve a different niche and differentiate.
Let's be honest, the next time someone attempts to do a found footage movie, that's exactly what it's going to have to be, because nobody uses camcorders anymore. Everyone films on their phone. And I mean, whether it was today in the news looking at things happening in the world, whether it was the past 3 weeks, and all you see is people wandering around staring at their phone in vertical mode, streaming or taking video or pictures or whatever. So yeah, I could definitely see that. You know, if you were going to make Cloverfield today, it's going to be in vertical format.
Yeah, super interesting. Other interesting things happening. I know that you're a big fan of Foo Fighters, as am I, and we just had the Super Bowl, and as part of the the gala event that is the Super Bowl, the Foo Fighters hosted a VR concert in the Metaverse using the Meta Venues application. And unfortunately, it sounds like things didn't really go off with it. There were some technical issues that plagued this, marquee launch of a VR concert. Did you happen to read into this at all, George?
Yeah, well, coming back to some previous shows we've done, I'm not a VR guy, so I don't even have a way of watching a VR thing. But I was tempted by this because I thought it would be pretty cool. And, again, big fan of Foo Fighters. Dave Grohl was on Hot Ones today, which was cool. I haven't finished watching it yet, but we've done our own version of Hot Ones here on this show before, which we should probably repeat again. But yeah, basically the concept here sounded interesting. Turns out kind of sucked, kind of fell down, kind of didn't really have value from what I gather, from what I've read.
Reading into it sounds like they were plagued by a lot of the same issues that we had back when we tested VR workrooms, and the main issue being getting in and the sort of the barrier to entry for people. So actually getting into the space, accessing the virtual environment, and getting registered with your ticket and getting in there was the big barrier. I understand that there was a delay and the app crashed and different things like that. And then the other issue was that maybe the production didn't exactly take advantage of the format, so to speak. It sounds like they were trying to create 2D video and sort of a virtual simulation at the same time, and stacking those layers on top of each other didn't really work. There's a much different process involved to create stereoscopic, 180 degree video. And from what I gather, they didn't have stereoscopic video. They had monoscopic. So you were able to kind of look around, move your head and get a different angle, but there was no sense of depth perception. And then the other thing that I think might have been disappointed is that there was no other audience engagement in the sense of having other people with you as avatars in the space. And you think of if I would imagine the perfect virtual concert, I want to have my friends around me. We're dancing, we're, having fun. And that side of the experience wasn't really created. It felt like, kind of like watching a recording of a concert rather than being there.
Which is essentially what it was. And I think that was the disappointment, was that, if you think about some of the experiments they've done for virtual concerts inside Fortnite, it offered a lot of those things you're mentioning. There were other avatars around, other people. It was fully three-dimensional and immersive, except for the fact that it's in Fortnite. It's not real, where they had the opportunity to try and do that. Obviously, the difficulty of trying to shoot that is immense. But it seems like, between the technical problems of people just not even being able to join because the servers crashed, to the actual content just not really being justified for VR, kind of is disappointing. It's kind of sad. Hopefully they try it again, but I would say this first attempt was unfortunately a failure. And maybe we can put the Twitter thread in there, but some people had some great insights on this, talking about how this really didn't come off the way I think they hoped.
It just goes back, George, to our tips. Live stream production tips and test. When you have something like this that is shattering barriers and boundaries and has never really been done before, it just goes to show that live events and live streaming and even at the highest level is very challenging. And to be able to get all of the technology working together is not easy, and even for pros who have produced major concerts with A-list bands like the Foo Fighters. So it just shows what the challenge of putting together a hybrid event, in the VR space, let alone any hybrid event. It really is not easy. And until you get that 100,000 people showing up, it's hard to say for certain whether everything's actually going to work.
No, absolutely. And, especially when it's a new platform. Meta's going to have some growing pains around these platforms if they're not resourcing it properly. And I'm not talking about human resourcing. I'm just talking about technological resourcing, right? Like if you're going to run servers and you're expecting 60,000 people, but you didn't resource it for at least double that, it's going to fall over. And that's exactly what happened.
Yeah, that's something that a lot of people don't realize is the CDN side, the amount of magic that is happening on the content delivery network side. And when we look at, scalable content delivery networks like Wowza, for example, or Vimeo, or, we kind of take YouTube for granted of just how amazing it is that, you can have 100,000 people watching the same thing at the same time over the internet. We really do take that for granted. And the massive amount of processing power to make that magic work, people don't really understand. So if you ever want to do a live stream where you have 10,000 or 20,000 or 50,000 people attending, you need some pretty powerful content delivery capabilities to be able to do that.
And that comes at a price, which is why all these platforms so heavily rely on advertising and data collection, which kind of brings us into the next story of Meta being in trouble, is that the state of Texas is suing Meta for data collection, essentially. And, not surprising. It's something that happens. People have been upset with Meta/Facebook for data collection forever. Interesting that it's getting to the point of a state government suing them over it. I don't think this will go anywhere, to be honest. I think it's just, it's a nothing, because they were collecting data. It was outlined in the terms of service. You volunteered that data. Sorry, it's tough. If you don't want people to gather data about you on the internet, don't put it on the internet is really the only safe bet. So we'll see what happens there. But it highlights going back to the beginning. Like, what do people do when their cameras are always on when you think you're just watching a movie, or you're just uploading a picture to Facebook because you wanted to share it with your grandmother? What happens with that information? And some of that maybe needs to be more transparent, but it is also the way that these companies make money in order to live stream to 100,000 people at the same time, because that infrastructure is extremely expensive.
Mm-hmm. And to tie in, it all comes back to like, what are the values of the applications that you're using? We talked about Web3 in one of our previous episodes, and how there's, we're still waiting to see how Web3 will be defined and whether it will be used for good or evil, so to speak. But a lot of the big tech is now trying to position themselves accordingly. And here you see Facebook releasing some new values for their company. In this case, Zuckerberg put a post up about sort of the hierarchy of their organization, Metamates, and Me, which I think caught some flack. Curiously, not surprisingly, perhaps.
Yeah.
What's also kind of interesting here is whenever Mark Zuckerberg actually has a Facebook post, if you look at the comments, it becomes a massive
dumpster fire.
It becomes like an advertising opportunity for folks. A lot of companies and sole proprietors trying to fashion their wares in the comment section of Mark Zuckerberg's post, which is kind of ironic in itself of how the platform is being used these days. But just curious, George, how do you see this playing out as these technologies continue to advance?
Well, I mean, I think Meta's going to go back and revisit some of these values, because yes, they did catch some flack on that. And some of this isn't new. They're just maybe being more open or overt about it. Way back in the day, Google used to have a value saying do no evil, basically. They scrapped that a number of years ago. They no longer claim that. I wouldn't say that Meta is claiming anything of the sort here either, especially with this concept of Metamates, and Me. That means you put yourself behind the company behind your coworkers, which is still the company. You put yourself last is basically what that value statement says to me, and I think that's absolutely the wrong direction, especially everything we've seen in the past 2 years in terms of the evolution of workplaces and things like that. It seems to me like this is just the wrong direction. But on top of that, they outlined things like move fast. Well, that's not new, except if you ask people historically in Facebook, the hidden tagline to that was move fast and break things. And I think they demonstrate that fairly regularly. Long-term impact. Well, what does that mean? Build awesome things. Well, that's debatable. Awesome to who? Live in the future. Well, whose future? Is it this future or something else? So some of it is, I don't know, but I definitely take a little bit of an issue with the Metamates and me, which is a bit of a take on an old Navy phrase of shipmate self. The difference is that a Meta employee shouldn't be putting themselves in the same position of a hierarchy of the military. That makes no sense. They're employees.
Yeah, the better acronym, who is it? Marcus Lemonis, I like his. People, product, process. If you look after your people, your company will do well. And obviously, people come first before product or process. So if I was going to pick a nice, tidy little tagline, maybe that would be it. Other
just
controversy.
Move the me to the front, and you've solved the problem.
Yeah, exactly. Bring the best of yourself to what you do every day, and if everyone does that, you'll get good results.
Exactly.
Other controversies surrounding Meta, just to kind of round this out, Metaverse has a groping problem. I don't know how else to say it than that. We could go into any amount of depth on this. I can't say this is entirely surprising, but when you're in a virtual environment, there's a whole new social contract that needs to be established there, and how is that going to work? This is not new. I think you saw this with everything from MySpace to World of Warcraft. And actually, I brought up this story from World of Warcraft. Not that I played World of Warcraft myself, but this is back in 2006. I swear I avoided that one. But back in 2006, there was like a beloved community member in the World of Warcraft scene who unfortunately passed away, and she was honored with a well-attended funeral in the game world. Unfortunately, a rival clan decided it would be appropriate to attack the funeral while they were filming a video for the girl's family, and it was actually really controversial, and it started to, the light bulb went off for me about like what is appropriate in these other realities, and where do you draw the line. It does raise new questions of like, whenever you have new technology, rules are going to be broken, social norms, social contracts are going to be broken until we establish what the new order is.
And I think that's the toughest thing that Meta's facing right now, because whether it's that example or whether it's every other VR experience we've had, whether, Second Life was one of the first ones, there's other ones more recently, long before Facebook's Metaverse. And in every single instance, there's been bad actors who behave incredibly badly and poorly, and in ways that they would never even conceive of behaving in real life. And that's part of it, is they're behind avatars. There's no concept of the social contract, like you mentioned, and people left to their own devices with anonymity and no social contract are apparently not great. Apparently people kind of suck sometimes. And this is a great example of it. It's really unfortunate that you have people who, they're going to enter this new technology. It's in a test phase, and you have all these Metamates doing their best to try and enforce this stuff, but they just can't keep up with the fact that there's, generally, unfortunately speaking, women being targeted in these platforms in inappropriate ways. And what do you do about it, ultimately? I think that's a big question. And that's a question guys like Zuckerberg need to be focused on, not, Metaverse, or Metamates and me slogans. He needs to be focused on how do we make sure that this is a safe platform for everyone to use, because inevitably you will have children in there, right? Like it doesn't matter if you set in the rules you have to be X age and older, you're going to have children in there. It's guaranteed.
Well, this is why they have, I guess they have what they're calling community guides who would be in the space and trying to police things a bit. Will that work? Who knows? It seems like we've been kind of taking a pessimistic approach to a lot of these topics today, but maybe there is light at the end of the tunnel here. Whenever you're venturing into new territory, it's going to raise questions. So to me, this shows that although there are some, controversies and failures and things that maybe aren't working, if you aren't breaking things, you aren't moving forward. Like, I don't want to sound so negative. Is like, it's exciting that people are trying to do concerts in VR. It's exciting that people are finding new ways to interact using new technologies. And I tend to take the side of optimistic on a lot of this. And even though we may not have figured out how all of this will work and how it will be good for people, let's not focus too much on the negatives, and let's look at what the possibilities could be. And I think there's a lot of positives we can draw.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And again, I think it's a bit of an uphill battle, but I hope, we can get there. It's not to be biblical, but, do unto others, right? It's a pretty simple concept.
The golden rule. It's easy.
Exactly. Be good to each other. And you're right, Dan. This seems like a more negative episode because there's a bit pessimistic about some of these things. And maybe it's too easy to be that way when you look around the world as it is today, certainly today. But at the same time, there's a lot of positive out there. A lot of these things could be game changing for, accessibility, people who are largely invisible in normal society. And those are all positives. We're just not there yet. And trying to figure out how we get there, I think, is the goal. Yeah. I think my question is, are we asking the right people to be in the leadership of that? Or are there better leaders that we could maybe look to help establish whatever this is going forward? And, that always makes me think about the funny little tagline we've often used internally here at Epiphan about democratization of video, right? Like that's and we've kind of turned that into a public thing of ours of broadcast without barriers. Those types of terms play very well into exactly this. We want barriers to be taken down. We want things to be open, but we also want them to be fair and safe for everyone involved.
Yeah. Just on that note, if you've ever seen, there's a great documentary on Netflix called The Social Dilemma that peers into a lot of this. And one of the sort of evangelists of this movement is Tristan Harris, who talks a lot about how to ethically steer technology for the 21st century. And I believe he has an organization that you can look at here. It's tristanharris.com. And it's all about using technology for good. I think it's called the Center for Humane Technology. And so, if you get a chance, watch that film, The Social Dilemma, and maybe look into Tristan Harris and this organization a bit. I find it very interesting. Maybe this is a good topic for another episode down the road. But speaking of good technology and people using technology for good, let's toot our own horn. Why don't we head over to the kitchen? I've got a little coffee left, and we'll talk about some happenings at Epiphan.
I apparently have some semi-invisible Metaverse. See, this is it's a pure Metaverse right here. Metaverse ginger ale.
So one of the big things that happened this week at Epiphan is we launched our new pricing for Epiphan Cloud. And with that, some new updates to the Epiphan Cloud platform that are very exciting. Yeah. So if you go to epiphan.com/cloud, you can learn all about it. It's how we produce this show remotely with a producer up in the cloud operating devices that sit on our desks in our home offices and in our studio in the Epiphan office. And all of that is possible without needing to step foot on premise. So you can create high quality content remotely. You can have a bunch of remote capabilities, kick off your events from anywhere. And here's what we're doing right now, using SRT streaming to aggregate high-quality streams and do some mixing and switching and all of those great things. So, if you head over to epiphan.com/cloud, you can learn all about it. You can also do a free trial. If you have Pearl devices, definitely recommend getting them synced up to the cloud to take advantage of these features.
Yeah, and I know we do have viewers of this show that are in Europe, as many of our customers are. We're doing a webinar geared towards your time zone, all about Epiphan Cloud coming up. So make sure you check out epiphan.com/webinars for that. Get signed up and check that out. We've done one later in the day, but we're going to try and do one to make sure that our friends over in Europe can join us for that as well. A little more in their time zone.
Yeah, before you get the kids to bed, you can spend some time with us in the afternoon. This is on March 2nd, and it'll be at 15:30 Central European time.
So we got some good stuff.
I think you'll be there, so get to come hang out and learn about how to use
but
cloud.
There's some great stuff coming to cloud as well. I mean, we've done this, which is awesome. There's some great stuff coming in the future as well, so stay tuned for that. Of course, we have more episodes of this show. We do this every 2 weeks, so our next episode will be March 10th, and we're working on some fun stuff there. March is an interesting month, and I think come April we're going to have some fun stuff to talk about as well. So everyone here at Epiphan is working extremely hard right now. Like, it's to the grindstone these days, which is awesome, and we're going to have a lot more fun stuff to share with everyone in the very near future. But for now, I think that's where we're going to wrap it up, Dan.
Yeah, let's call it a wrap. Maybe we'll show just a photo here. I want to show one cool Pearl setup before we leave. Look at this, 4 Pearl Nanos being paired with Epiphan Cloud to produce remote events. Check out our case studies on epiphan.com. There's some really cool ones. This one is really awesome, talking about Epiphan Cloud, but I just had to show that photo because anytime I see 4 Pearl Nanos in a stack looking awesome like that, I get very excited. So maybe
I love just scrolling through LinkedIn and stumbling across pictures like that from all over the place.
You know, another good place to do that is go on Instagram and hashtag Epiphan video. You'll see some behind the scenes at a lot of really cool setups. I've been doing that and enjoying it very much.
Yeah, exactly. So be sure to follow, like, subscribe in all those social places like Facebook, Meta, Instagram, here on YouTube, and of course, you know, you can find Epiphan people on LinkedIn if you're looking to reach out professionally. And we will see you in the next webinar, the next episode, and around the Metaverse. Thanks so much.
So long, everyone. Bye-bye. Bye.